ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Conakry, 1 o'clock in Lagos. Good afternoon and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide at wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. First, our top stories. Guinean President Doumbouya appoints new executive team comprising 20 ministers. Senegalese President Diomaye Faye arrives in Congo for a two-day working visit to strengthen cooperation. U.S. envoy Cheka continues Sahel tour with hope of renewing security cooperation.
I am also here to address and correct the mistakes of the previous Biden administration.
And Liberia partners with the UN to train judges and judicial staff to strengthen justice delivery.
We have specialized people within those UN agencies who are among the facilitators. We have somebody from UNICEF who is specialized in international crimes when it comes to children.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is a more edit.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. We'll begin in Guinea, where President General Mamadi Doumbouya late Monday night announced a partial list of members of the new government 1 week after the government structure was put in place. 20 ministers were appointed out of the 29 expected, featuring a mix of new faces and several reappointments. Sankle Janko completes the story.
Just days after the reappointment of Amadou Ouriba as head of government, a decree broadcast Monday evening announced the first phase of Guinea's executive team. In the decree signed by President General Mamadi Doumbouya, 20 ministers have been appointed out of the 29 initially planned. The appointments were made on the recommendation of Prime Minister Ouriba. Only 4 of the ministers are new. They include George Ibrahim Sori Tunkara, who led the trial of the September 28, 2009 massacre, now serving as Minister of Justice and Human Rights. General Ahmed Mohamed Diallo takes charge of security and civil protection. Kaite Sall is named Minister of Health and Public Hygiene, and Patricia Adeline Lama becomes Minister of Women, Family and Social Affairs. The remaining 60 ministers were part of the previous government. Among them, government spokesperson Usman Gaul Jallo, who retained his post while others were reassigned. The final 9 ministers are expected to be named in the coming days.
Sankli Janko filed that report. In the meantime, Senegalese President Diomaye Faye arrived in Congo on Monday afternoon for a two-day working and friendship visit. Diomaye Faye's visit, according to the presidency, is also aimed at strengthening cooperation with Brazzaville in several sectors. Abdullah Hassan has more details in this report.
Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye was received on Monday afternoon at Brazzaville Airport by his Congolese counterpart Denis Sassou Nguesso. The two leaders later held a private meeting at the presidential palace. Today, Tuesday, talks will continue with the working session expanded to include delegations from both countries. The meeting will include an assessment of the state of cooperation between Dakar and Brazzaville. In recent years, Senegal has been active in Congo's energy sector alongside cooperation in other areas. Particular attention will be given to the partnership between the electricity companies in both countries. During a visit to Dakar by the Congolese Prime Minister in June 2025, both countries reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening cooperation in sanitation, higher education, defense, finance, trade, and the development of special economic zones. Several agreements are expected to be signed. The Senegalese and Congolese presidents will also discuss broader continental issues, including key diplomatic and security challenges facing the African continent.
Abdullah Hassan with that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Crossing over to the Sahel, Mali and the United States are renewing political dialogue. On Monday, Mali's Foreign Minister Abdoulaye Diop received Nick Cheka, the U.S. envoy for African Affairs, for talks focused on reviving bilateral cooperation. The visit comes as America once again seeks to reposition itself in the Central Sahel through engagement with the AES bloc. Augustine Kuli reports.
During the meeting in Bamako, the two diplomats discussed ways to revive cooperation, particularly in the fight against terrorism. The United States also expressed interest in resuming economic partnership with Mali, describing it as a mutually beneficial relationship. At the end of the talks, the U.S. Assistant Secretary for African Affairs reaffirmed his country's respect for Mali's sovereignty and emphasized Washington's desire to open a new chapter in bilateral cooperation.
I am here as a representative of the Trump administration. I have come to hold discussions with the Malian government with full respect for Mali's sovereignty. As I said, my visit focuses on issues such as the fight against terrorism and the country's economic development. I am also here to address and correct the mistakes of the previous Biden administration.
For his part, Mali's Foreign Minister Abdoulaye Diop welcomed this fresh approach, stressing the importance of considering current geopolitical developments, especially in the Central Sahel. Nick Checker's visit to Mali marks a significant step in renewing relations between Bamako and Washington.
That report was found in by our Bamako correspondent Aliu Chairman, voiced by Augustine Coley. Still in the Sahel, analysts say recent developments point to growing U.S. diplomatic engagement in the region, balancing sovereignty, alliances, and commercial interests. The AES bloc, whose closest ally is Russia, is this week hosting a U.S. envoy, Nick Checker. Washington says the visit is aimed at strengthening security cooperation with Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger in the fight against terrorism. Sahel analyst with the International Crisis Group, Franklin Nosita, spoke to WDR.
I think that it's in large part motivated by security concerns, with the Sahel, by certain measures, currently the global hotspot for jihadism and jihadist-related violence, even more than the Middle East these days. And, that even if there's a new push right now, the engagement of the U.S. in this part of the world on security concerns is not new. It's existed since the early 2000s. Going into the famous drone base in Niger. And then with the Trump administration, since it assumed office, actually has been sending signals that they are concerned about security in the Sahel and that they want to engage on that issue with multiple visits by various Trump administration personalities like Rudy Atala to Bamako not too long ago. Signaling that. And then I think there's also kind of the commercial diplomacy side of it too. Obviously, it's a big thing for the Trump administration.
That was International Crisis Group analyst Franklin Nosita. In Nigeria, police in Kaduna State say at least 80 worshippers who were earlier reported abducted from 3 churches have returned home. However, the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, has disputed a claim raising doubts over official accounts of last month's church attacks. The police and church leaders are both giving conflicting figures on those abducted and released following the January 18 attack by bandits. From Abuja, WDR's Yechin Desasiche reports.
Gunmen had stormed the churches in Kaduna State on January 18, seizing worshippers during services and escaping into nearby forests. CAN had put the number of abducted worshippers at 177. According to the group, 11 people later escaped, leaving 166 worshippers unaccounted for. However, the Kaduna State Police spokesperson, Mansour Hassan, said fresh investigations revealed that 80 of those reported missing were not abducted but had fled to neighboring villages during the attack. He said the individuals only returned to their community, Kurminwali, over the weekend after feeling it was safe to do so. Hassan added that the police have invited the returnees to the Kaduna State Police Headquarters for identity verification, screening, and health assessment. The police had initially denied that any abduction took place before later acknowledging the incident and saying security forces were searching for those missing. CAN has, however, dismissed the police account. The chairman of CAN in Kaduna State, Reverend Caleb Maaji, said he had no information about any return of abducted worshippers. According to him, the number of those kidnapped remains 177, apart from the 11 who escaped and are currently receiving medical care. Discrepancies between police figures and accounts from CAN are not uncommon in cases involving church attacks and abductions. Kidnapping for ransom remains widespread in northern Nigeria, where armed groups frequently target villages, schools, places of worship, and motorists. Security agencies say efforts are ongoing to curb the activities of armed groups operating across the region. For WADR, Yechin Sasetu reporting.
In Ghana, Labour analysts has welcomed the country's new labour export agreements with Caribbean nations. Austin Game commended the scheme as a practical way to tackle youth unemployment and utilize surplus skilled workers. Under the recent initiatives, 121 health workers were sent to Antigua and Barbuda, while a newly signed agreement will allow for the exchange of teachers and nurses to Jamaica. Officials say the programs benefit both Ghana and the receiving countries by meeting demand for skilled professionals. From Accra, Nadi Tete reports.
Labour analyst Austin Game has expressed support for Ghana's labour export arrangements with Antigua and Barbuda, Jamaica and other Caribbean states. In an interview with WADR, he said the government's decision to deploy nurses, teachers and other professionals abroad responds to growing international demand while easing pressure from unemployed graduates at home.
One area where the unemployment is populated among the youth and between the nurses and teachers and other health workers. And now that we have opportunities like in Antigua, we have some in Barbados, we have some now in Jamaica, both in demands of teachers and nurses. I think it's only fair that we continue to do that. It's good to train people, prepare them for the world of work, and we are good to go as a nation.
Mr. Game dismissed concerns that the program could worsen shortages in local hospitals and schools, insisting Ghana has enough trained personnel to meet domestic needs if posting systems are properly managed. He argued that similar labour sharing models exist elsewhere and can work to Ghana's advantage.
We have many nurses who have been picketing that they want employment. We have teachers who say they have not been placed. There are some people in Ghana who want to transfer and or employ them for some villages. They will not go. But you and I know that people from Cuba will come here and go to those remote areas. What does that tell us? The Cuban people also need people in their hospitals. They train more and they are available, including doctors. And they come here and go to those remote areas.
Government recently deployed 121 Ghanaian health professionals to Antigua and Barbuda under the Ghana Labour Export Program and has also signed a new labour exchange agreement with Jamaica to send teachers and nurses to the Caribbean. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
In Togo, plastic pollution is no longer just an environmental issue. It has become a major public health concern. From ecosystems to human cells and even into DNA, plastic is penetrating every level of life, exposing populations to risks that are still largely unknown. To raise awareness and encourage collective action, the International Francophone Zero Plastic Coalition, through its member organizations in Togo, organized a screening and discussion of the documentary Homo Plasticus this weekend in Lomé. Let's join Christopher Tijo for the report.
Every day in Togo, millions of plastic bags are used and discarded without proper treatment, says environmentalists. This silent pollution now threatens not only the environment, but also public health. In response, citizens and environmental advocates are sounding the alarm. Adeosi Sherif, president of the Nenufa and Lutus Togo Association, highlights the urgency of action.
We organized these events to raise awareness about the presence of microplastics in the human body, from mother to a child, even in the womb. This transfer is already happening, meaning babies are exposed before birth. This is information that must be shared to prevent Homo sapiens from becoming Homo plastics. The plastic crisis is real.
Civil society actors on environmental issues now aim to raise awareness about the health risks of plastic pollution and encourage citizens' action, says Boluvi Ablam Seno, Togo focal point for International Francophone Zero Plastic Coalition.
In Africa, plastic pollution is an enemy knocking on our doors. This documentary is part of the Zero Plastic Francophonie project. It aims to raise awareness and offer alternatives to single-use plastic, helping people take action.
Through upcoming awareness campaigns, the coalition hopes to spark a collective response to the growing threat of plastic, which increasingly impacts human health.
A report by Sylvia Wadr in Loman, presented by Christopher Aticho. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM in Dakar and live on wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Guinean President Doumbouya appoints a new executive team comprising 20 ministers. Senegalese President Diomaye Faye arrives in Congo for a 2-day working visit to strengthen cooperation. U.S. envoy Cheka continues Sahel tour with hope of renewing security cooperation. And still ahead in the news, Liberia partners with the UN to train judges and judicial staff to strengthen justice delivery. We don't have the press review, a guest interview, and sport news. Please stay with us.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Don't forget, we're also streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. In Liberia, the government, in partnership with the United Nations Commission on Human Rights, has launched a specialized training program for prosecutors and judicial staff to strengthen the rule of law. The objective is to promote accountability, address past human rights abuses, combat corruption, and uphold international legal standards. WDL's Abraham Park in Monrovia reports.
The 2-day workshop, organized by the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, focused on accountability for gross human rights abuses and serious violations of international humanitarian law. The training targeted Liberian judges and judiciary officers. Speaking at the opening, Liberia's Justice Minister and Attorney General Osford Toy called for building a stronger pool of skilled prosecutors to ensure fair and credible justice.
We have been meeting with foreign government and their agencies, including the FBI, for the joint collaboration in our clear vision to combat corruption and financial crime. We are committed to pursuing corrupt officials who have misappropriated millions of dollars and invested their ill-gotten gains abroad.
The UN Human Rights Office country representative in Liberia, Christian Mokosa, said the training aims to provide basic knowledge on international crimes.
We have specialized people within those UN agencies who are among the facilitators. We have somebody from UNICEF who specializes in international crimes when it comes to children, someone from UN Women when it comes to participation of women and techniques, how lawyers can talk with women victims.
Liberia's World and Economic Crimes Court Office has reaffirmed its commitment to justice and accountability, describing them as vital to long-term stability and development. The office says it will continue working with national and international partners to hold the perpetrators of human rights and economic crimes accountable. It should be noted, however, that despite the progress made, including President Joseph Boakar's establishment of the court's office, a legislative framework is being awaited to fully make it operational. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, let's stay a little longer in Monrovia as we join Abraham Parker for the newspaper review.
This edition features 3 local dailies. We begin with the Heritage newspaper that goes with these stories. Who financed Satan demolition victims? Representative Tours or Nangbe? A question being asked here, and it talks about residents who were being evicted on 5th Street here in Monrovia. Central Bank of Liberia holds rate tight as inflation ease, economy strengthens. Liberia as AU security seat. That does it for the Heritage newspaper. Up next is Front Page Africa that goes with these stories. Wetlands are now wastelands. Liberia's wetlands under threat as EPA sounds alarm on World Wetlands Day. They want to kill us. Satan demolitions leave residents homeless. Dakar unchecked. Demolition. Unity Party Chairman blasts action as concerning empathetic. Our next and last stop is the In Profile Daily. Port evasions leave hundreds homeless. Student Unification Party declares University of Liberia a no-go zone for National Port Authority Managing Director Duclay. And Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Liberia's former president, inspires the students at a sitting of Ho Academy. Well, that does it for this edition of Press Review for Liberia's capital Monrovia. It's back to you in studio.
Many thanks, Abraham Parker.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, our guest is a Sahel analyst with the International Crisis Group, Franklin Nosita. Nosita speaks to WDI against the backdrop of an ongoing tour of the AES bloc by a U.S. envoy, Nick Cheka. Cheka, who has already met with authorities in Mali, is expected in Burkina Faso and Niger, where he intends to meet with the military leaders to discuss security cooperation. For the trio, would they be at a crossroad of sovereignty, balancing alliances and commercial interests? As a reminder, the U.S. was expelled by the AES member states following the coups and learned more toward Russia for support. Franklin Nosita responds.
What happened in the 2020s, mainly under the Biden administration, was I think it was mostly, and I think people might disagree about this, but it was mostly a backlash against France, which had a big military presence and all of this in the region, fighting these jihadist groups. And the U.S. was kind of, and I know that there's U.S. officials who feel this way, that the U.S. was kind of just swept up along in that, even if the backlash was mainly against France. And I think that there's people in the U.S., in the Trump administration, who are people who have worked on issues of counterterrorism and jihadist groups for a long time. And even if Trump himself has a more isolationist bent, there's people in his administration that, frankly, when they see jihadists around the world, they want to go and find them and kill them. And that's what they want to come to the Sahel and do. Now, will they be able to do that, I think, is another question, given the political complexities.
Is this more now about America trying to reposition itself in the Sahel and have a grip on West Africa, or it's a fight now about the strong and mighty, which has been more like the Trump recent trend, just going to countries and imposing the American military strength? Again, this would be directly targeting Russia or China?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. The Trump administration wants to signal that it's very different from the Biden administration. So where the Biden administration said, the Nigerians kicked the U.S. out, but also that was partially because the Biden administration, sent signals very directly said, we're not going to work with a coup government. You need to have elections. You don't work with Russia. Don't do this. Don't do that. Whereas, my understanding of the Trump administration has been much more, they've been much more maybe relaxed, you might say, on some of those questions. So I think that they want to demonstrate how different they are and say, well, you guys, the coup leaders in the Sahel, you couldn't work with Biden, but we're a new kind of America. And you can work with us. And I think that's a message they want to send to the Sahel, but I think they want to send that message kind of to everyone. And then I think that there's also, there seems to be a real interest in some circles of Washington for more activity in West Africa, which is seeing, big jihadist violence, not just in the Sahel, but obviously in Nigeria as well, where, the U.S. did the strikes not too long ago. And I think all of that shows that I think it's very important not to overestimate it. West Africa isn't for the Trump administration, and it's never, in fact, really been a priority region for any American administration.
I mean, for most of the countries that Trump goes to today, there is a bit of the talks covered under political disguise or protection of human rights. But then these are countries also rich in mineral resources. Could this be a long-term agenda for Trump?
Yeah, I think it's certainly something to consider. Obviously, everybody has paid a lot of attention to the U.S. involvement in the Congo, in DRC, where, there's lots of what they call critical minerals, and the U.S. was very involved in a peace accord, and that gave it access to those minerals. But I think the situation in the Sahel is actually quite a bit different from what you see in DRC for a couple of reasons. First of all, the U.S. has a history of commercial and mining involvement in the DRC, and they just don't have that in the Sahel, where much of the mining has been done by French or Canadian even, or Russian in some cases. And when you don't have that pre-existing involvement on some of this kind of infrastructure-intensive stuff like industrial mining, it makes it difficult to get involved. And then the minerals that are there in my opinion, less attractive to the U.S. than some of the rare minerals you see in Congo, for example. I mean, you see, in the Sahel, you've got lots of gold, you've got uranium in Niger, you've got lithium in Mali, but the lithium, the Chinese, actually, there's already a Chinese company involved in lithium exploitation in Mali. The uranium, I don't see the U.S. really going for that in a serious way. I mean, and again, the gold, it's already kind of all being occupied. So I think it's certainly something. And we've actually seen American companies kind of looking at gold mines in southern Mali. And we've actually seen a Canadian company with American support looking at uranium in Niger. So, I don't want to never say never, right?
Franklin Nosita is a Sahel analyst with the International Crisis Group. A sport brief. South Africa's Sports Minister Gayton McKenzie says no formal decision has been taken to move the 2026 Women's Africa Cup of Nations from Morocco. This follows comments by his deputy Peace Mabe suggesting South Africa would host the tournament scheduled for March 17, 2026. McKenzie stressed that Morocco remains the official host and that CAF has not triggered any alternative hosting process, adding South Africa has only offered support if needed. Meanwhile, Championship leaders Coventry have signed Nigerian midfielder Frank Onyeka on a loan from Brentford until the end of the season. The move could become permanent if Coventry gain promotion. Onyeka 28 has made 87 appearances for Brentford and was part of the Nigeria's AFCON squad. And finally in sport, LeBron James has been selected for a record 22nd straight NBA All-Star Games as a Western Conference reserve. The 41-year-old Lakers star says his focus remains on performance, not accolades. And that's it on this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Maudaju for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms, X, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at WATR English. I am Emo Edit. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Baga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa